Okay, English 10. We are going to move from our usual spot in the chair in the living room to my wife's makeshift elementary school classroom. I want to use her easel. I wrote down your vocabulary words in there so that you could fill out the worksheet. And here they are, the vocab words. Let me get them all in there. I got this right. Can you guys see that? So we have discords, are disagreements. Gradation is seniority. Precipitous is done suddenly. Malevolent is evil. Rankle is to cause lasting resentment. Exult is feeling exceedingly joyful. Narcissism is excessive self-love or vanity. Self-dramatization, over exaggerating one's qualities or situation for the purpose of attention. Iniquity is immoral, grossly unfair behavior. Appropriates is take something for one's own use. To take something for one's own use is to appropriate. Displaced is to be wrongly removed. Again, I want you to write those definitions down on your worksheet. I don't know. You guys probably screenshotted them. That's fine. But they need to be, typed into your worksheet. That needs to be completed. But I do want you to have, those words handy. A lot of these words, some of them are just for, sheer comprehension, but a few of them are really meaningful to understanding this essay, Othello, A Modern Perspective by Susan Snyder. That's where these vocabulary words come from, obviously, and we're going to read some of that today. It is found on page 291 in your textbook, and it goes through 302. It's 301, really. We're excited at the end, but today we are going to read from 291 through the end of page 295. So just a few pages, but it's dense, all right? There's a lot going on here. Yeah, I guess we'll just begin. And there's 3 questions on there, right? There's the vocab. You got to write down the vocab and answer the 3 questions. Early in Act 2 of Othello, the newly married Othello and Desdemona are reunited in Cyprus, having survived the storm at sea that threatened their separate ships. The meeting is rapturous, almost beyond words. Othello: I cannot speak enough of this content. It stops me here. It is too much of joy. And then they kiss. And this, and this. Then they kiss again and kiss again. The greatest discords be that ever our hearts shall make, right? That these kisses will be the worst disagreements that they'll ever have, right? This discords. And discords, disagreements. And note that there is a musical connotation to that word as well. Discords, it means like it's out of tune. In a film, the background music would swell at this point. These lovers, a dark-skinned Moorish general and a white Venetian lady, have triumphed over daunting obstacles, right? They overcame a lot. Racial difference and the attendant cultural taboos, disparities of culture and of age, the angry opposition of Desdemona's father, Brabantio, urged on by Othello's malicious subordinate Iago, the threat of the attacking Turkish fleet, and finally the raging storm that scattered the Turks and might well have swamped the Venetian ships as well. On this high note of joy, with the forces against their happiness destroyed or rendered powerless, the married life of Desdemona and Othello begins, and it should be good. But less than 2 days later, the marriage is utterly destroyed, and with it, Othello and Desdemona themselves. Discords, there's that word again, right? Disagreements arise between them that cannot be resolved with kisses. Indeed, when we next see Othello kissing Desdemona, that's Act 5, Scene 2, lines 18 and 21, it is a nostalgic gesture before he executes her as an unfaithful wife. Remember, before he wakes her up, he kisses her a couple times while she's sleeping, and then kills her. Even allowing for the conventional economy and foreshortening of drama, this is a precipitous breakdown of love and trust. All right, precipitous. It's done suddenly. It's a sudden breakdown of their love and trust. What goes so quickly and terribly wrong with the marriage of Othello and Desdemona? In what follows, I suggest various approaches to this question. And that answers question number 1 on your worksheet, right? What question does this essay explore? And that is, what goes so quickly and terribly wrong with the marriage of Othello and Desdemona? That question is the answer to question number 1. In what follows, I suggest various approaches to this question. Some overlap, some point in opposing directions. Neither separately nor in conjunction can they offer anything like the whole truth. The most obvious and immediate answer is Iago. It is he who plots to poison Othello's happiness and to bring down Cassio as well by getting him first stripped of his military position and then suspected by the Moor as Desdemona's lover. It is Iago whom everyone on stage condemns at the play's conclusion. In a space of the last 130 lines or so, various appalled characters call him viper, devil, wretch, pernicious caitiff, Spartan dog, and repeatedly slave and villain. At the Cyprus reunion in Act 2, Scene 1, Iago's malevolence, right, his evil nature, already adds a jarring note to the triumphant background music. Directly after the speech quoted above, Othello's wish that kisses be their greatest discords, Iago says in an aside, "Oh, you are well tuned now, but I'll set down the pegs that make this music." And pegs are the things you turn, like to tune an instrument. As honest as I am, right? He's going to mess it all up. You're well tuned now, but he is going to create discord. The question of what drives Iago to ruin the Othello music is one that has been long debated. To his pawn, Roderigo, and to the audience in soliloquy, Iago speaks at one time or another of many grievances, right? Problems. What's Iago's problem? Why does he do this? Othello has made Cassio his lieutenant rather than Iago, which we talked about at length in class, who wanted and claims to have deserved the post. Iago suspects that his wife, Amelia, has betrayed him with the Moor, with Othello, right? Iago wants revenge, whether by possessing Desdemona, right, to be even with him wife for wife, or by shattering Othello's marital happiness. He says he's going to make him crazy with jealousy in the play. Cassio is his chosen instrument because Cassio is attractive to women and an additional threat to Iago's husbandly rights of ownership over Amelia. So, for the question regarding the character traits, what traits about Iago, what of Iago's character, drives him to do these terrible things? One is his jealousy. He's jealous of Cassio. In spite of this wealth of inciting causes, critics have felt a disparity between the magnitude of Iago's malevolent work and the motives he gives for it. Okay, so in other words, like critics over the years have found that there's a disparity, like between like the magnitude of the bad things that Iago does and his motives. Like he doesn't, they find that he doesn't really have a motive to be as bad and do the bad things that that he does. Like it's an overreaction. There are too many of them, for one thing. The fears of being cuckolded, mentioned only once or twice, don't seem to go very deep. She doesn't say it here, but Iago actually, he says that, he's like, I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm just going to assume, I'm just going to behave like it is. And when Iago, after engineering Cassio's downfall, does get the lieutenancy at the end of Act 3, Scene 3, he expresses no satisfaction either then or later. Remember, like some halfway through the play, he becomes lieutenant, and he just doesn't seem like very excited about it. Deeper insight comes from a few glimpses of Iago, or deeper insight comes from a few glimpses Iago affords us into his feelings, apart from the occasions he cites. I hate the more is his obsessive litany. I have told thee often, and I retell thee again and again. This may be well suspect, like anything else, he says to Roderigo, but even when alone, he reiterates it. He says, I hate the more. And it is thought abroad that twixt my sheets he has done my office. All right? And it is thought abroad, and people are saying that he has had an affair with his wife, Amelia. You know, the phrasing, and is thought, not because it is thought, detaches the hatred from any immediate cause, gives it a dark life of its own. I mean, look carefully at those words. They're saying, he doesn't say, I hate the more because it is thought that he had an affair with my wife. He says, I hate the more, and it is thought that he's had an affair with my wife. Bernard Spivak pointed out this unexpected and the resulting detachment. He concluded that Iago was a descendant of the vice character in medieval allegorical drama. And these vice characters in medieval allegorical dramas were like, they like represented one of the like 7 deadly sins, one of the 7 vices, which are envy, gluttony, greed, lust, pride, sloth, wrath, and avarice, which is a desire for power. These characters, these vice characters, like embodied one of those bad things, one of those vices. And the main character was like represented like everyman, and that was oftentimes that was his name. They would call the main character's name would be like everyman, and this vice character represented like the devil and would tempt him. And it was an allegorical play. It had like a positive meaning or a lesson to be learned for the audience. And these vice characters were just bad. They were the devil. And they weren't bad for a reason. They were bad because they represented one of the 7 deadly sins. They were the embodiment of gluttony or greed or lust. So this guy, Bernard Spivak, is saying that, that Iago, he's a descendant of the vice character in a medieval allegorical drama. That he's bad because he's bad. It's his nature. But at times, certainly Iago's malevolence, his evilness, seems too absolute for ordinary motivation. presenting rather what Melville called, in the Iago-like Claggart he created for Billy Budd, the mystery of iniquity. All right. So obviously, I never read Billy Budd, but Ernest Hemingway must have had a really bad guy too called Claggart, and who was really bad for no apparent reason. Right. And this iniquity, it's immoral or grossly unfair. Okay. Like there's no reason for someone to be so bad. But the reader or viewer, as well as the actor assigned to play Iago, may nevertheless find enlightenment of various kinds. In human psychology, it is possible, for example, to see Iago not as an inhuman embodiment of evil, but as a man who habitually feels the fine qualities and good fortunes of others as injuries to himself. All right, so he, what drives Iago? That he finds that when good things happen to other people, or good things happen for other people, that it injures himself, that it hurts him. He seems to point to the characteristic in himself later in the play, when he tells us why Cassio has to die. As one who can expose Iago's deception to Othello, Cassio is a practical danger. But that is just an afterthought to Iago's more basic resentment of Cassio. Right? He says, that he wants Cassio to die because Cassio could reveal his plan to Othello. But he also says that he hath a daily beauty in his life that makes me ugly. Iago feels himself a have-not, right? That's another reason. That's another thing that drives Iago, right? He considers himself a have-not. The graces of Cassio and Desdemona and the glamorous life and language of Othello must rankle in maddening contrast, cause lasting resentment, rankle. He's resentful. Probing the subtext further, we may see recurring through his real and imagined grievances the anxiety of displacement, the fantasies of being dislodged from his sole rights as husband by Othello or Cassio are problematic. All right, displacement. He's displaced, to be wrongfully removed. He feels, he feels displaced. He feels that, he's been wrongfully removed. The fantasies of being dislodged from his sole rights as a husband by Othello or Cassio are problematic, more firmly based in reality, and more galling is his displacement by Cassio as Othello's lieutenant and an intimate friend. The Moor has passed over his ensign Iago with all his experience in the battlefield to choose the well-bred Cassio, courtly in behavior and schooled in bookish theory. He's educated, and he is well-bred, and he's handsome, and Othello likes him. Iago himself is of the lower class. Honest, the label he constantly receives from others, is complimentary, but also patronizing, used to pat inferiors on the head. Oh, honest Iago. Insecurity about his place in the social hierarchy blends into specific obsession about the military position he has failed to attain. Right? So he is also insecure. Complaining, he sounds rather like an NCO jeering angrily at the advancement of a West Point graduate. All right, an NCO is a non-commissioned officer, and that's like someone who has worked his way up through the ranks. A commissioned officer, usually has a college degree, right? Has a bachelor's degree and has graduated from military school. And they're complaining he sounds like a non-commissioned officer jeering angrily at the advancement or the promotion, right, of a West Point graduate. 'Tis the curse of service. Preferment goes by letter and affection, right? Letter meaning like letters of recommendation, and affection meaning, that someone just likes someone else. And not by old gradation, not by seniority, where each second stood heir to the first. Promotion by seniority, gradation, would presumably have rewarded Iago for his long service in the field. But now it is letter and affection that count. Letters from recommendation from influential people, and Othello's own partiality for Cassio, stronger than any regard he had for Iago. In spite of the experience he and his general shared in several campaigns, that means like battles, Iago is shut out from this affection. The closeness that draws Othello naturally to make his well-born friend his lieutenant, the one who will act in his stead, that means like replace him if something happens to him, and represent him. The rejection can be seen as a double one. As Cassio appropriates, do I have that up here? Yeah, that's takes something for one's own, right? He takes Othello on one hand, Desdemona draws him on the other, away from the bond of fellow soldiers into a new intimacy of marriage. Iago might thus say with Hamlet, how all occasions do inform against me, right? Everything is working against him. Each event stirs his general sense of being put down, discounted, and excluded. Iago feels put down. He feels discounted. He feels excluded. And wrongly so, right? He feels, remember, this place feels wrongly removed. His shrewd intelligence makes him all the more resentful at being subordinate to both Othello and Cassio in the army hierarchy, okay? Like, he's smart, and he knows he's smart. He knows he's smarter than Othello, and he's smarter than Cassio. But there's other things that have, gotten in his way. He feels like, that he was dealt a bad lot. He exults in manipulating them, right? He exults. He feels exceeding joy, one of our vocab words, in manipulating them. In being the one truly in command. Manipulating Cassio is easy, for the lieutenant has a defined weakness, susceptibility to drink. Now, Cassio's not a drunk, we know that, but he's not a good drinker. He can't hold his liquor. With Roderigo's help, it is not difficult for Iago to lead Cassio onto brawling on the watch and quick demotion. Does Othello also show signs of vulnerability? For some critics, narcissism, that's one of our vocabulary words, which means excessive self-love or vanity, and self-dramatization are all too apparent in the noble Moor. Self-dramatization, that's over-exaggerating one's qualities or situation for the purpose of attention. Is Othello a narcissist? Is he a self-dramatist? But for some critics, narcissism and self-dramatization are all too apparent in the noble Moor, enough to destroy his marriage even without much help from Iago. Without so thoroughly discounting Othello's greatness, we may well recognize in him a social insecurity that renders him open to Iago's insinuations. All right, he's insecure socially, that leaves him vulnerable to Iago. All right, and right there in those last lines were the answers to that third question. But I'm going to go over some of those things. I'll write something down here. I know you can't see it, see that thing very well. I'm not going to fix it. And I'll do a close up of it once I get it all written down. Yeah, maybe you can see that. Like I said, I'll still do a close up of it. But Iago, right? What drives him? Now remember, this whole thing is about, we're exploring that question. What goes so quickly and terribly wrong with the marriage of Othello and Desdemona? And one, Iago. What drives Iago to be so bad? Rejection. He feels rejected for his job. Insecurity. He's insecure. He feels put down. Discounted. And excluded. I better put rejection, insecurity, feels put down, discounted, and excluded. Obviously, he was overlooked for the promotion. He suspects that his wife Amelia has betrayed him with Othello. Suspects Amelia, remember with an E-M-E-M-I-L-A, Amelia, Othello, affair. Threatened by Cassio's attractiveness. He's threatened by Cassio. Right? He says that Iago says that Cassio has a daily beauty in his life that makes him ugly. Hatred. He says, I hate the more. And he sees the good in others as injuries to himself. Sees the good in others as injuries to himself. What else? Oh, and he thinks that he sees himself as a have-not. And displaced. What do we got there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 10. All right. So these are the things that get that. So we see here Iago kind of has a lot to be angry about. get that better? Come on. All right. Now who else we got here? We got a question about Othello. There's only a couple things that are great in the end there. About Othello. Things that make him, characteristics that make him susceptible to Iago are, one, his narcissism. Self-dramatization. And social insecurity. Those things we will discuss more in our next session on Thursday. But again, those are all the answers to your worksheet. So it should be fairly easy to complete if you watch the video. And I'll see you again on Thursday. Thank you.